Hello and welcome to another Blender tutorial. I was thinking about doing a series of videos dealing with Blender and its uses for concept art. I'll be going through a lot of the modifiers and trying to simplify what each of them do and the applications within your art. Usually when it comes to modeling, we tend to overthink a lot of the steps and having to hand place everything, but by having automated solutions, we can dream bigger and realize our concepts faster. So for this first one, I'll just be using a cube and how we can use the array and curve modifier in conjunction with each other to generate rather interesting and complex results simply with a cube. Alright, so in the very beginning of the scene here, let's just add a cube. So you can see I've turned on screencast keys, Shift A, add cube. We'll just move this off to the side here. Now I'm going to Shift A, add a curve, and you can see I have probably more curve options than you do. The reason for that is if I go into Edit, Preferences, and if I enter into add-ons here, you can find them under Extra Objects and Add Curve, Extra Objects. And that just makes it a bit more simpler, adding circles and all these other like complex shapes. So I guess for this demo, I'm just going to use a path. I find paths are easier to manipulate. This is just me, but if you like Bezier curves, they're also available for you. So I'm just going to use a path for now. And now let's just combine the two together. So we can array this and make it follow the direction of this. The application for this is so that we don't have to constantly duplicate objects and try and make them merge like this. What we can end up doing is just arraying this. So we click on this object here, modifier properties, add array, and then we can do either relative or constant. The difference between this is the distances. It'll automatically make sure it keeps it at 1, but however, when you add more, constant offset will just always constantly keep it between 1. What do I mean by that? Well, let's just show you a quick demo here. So let's say if I go 1.5, you can see it's a little bit offset, but as soon as I go in and start moving it, you can see it's still keeping the space in between them by a value of 1.5. Now if you don't want that, we can do constant offset and watch this 1.5, and now you can see it's always keeping that 1.5 offset over here. There's different uses for this, but I just wanted to showcase that. There's also object offset. So let's say if I add an empty, let's go into empty plane axis, click here, object offset, select our empty, and now when we move our empty, that's the distance it's going to be in. You can do some really cool things with this. So let's go back to here, to our cube, and check out our offset. We can do, so you can see we'll have 4 here. And with this cube, you can see you can start having some fun with like rotating objects around. This could be one way instead of using a cube. You can rotate it like this to make them offset a little bit differently. And it's kind of powerful just using a array modifier. You can probably start dreaming some cool things because it's offsetting the rotation factors with this as well. Now, if I keep adding it on, you can see we've created like this interesting spiral structure. What this also allows us to do is like when we scale this, it's also scaling it. It's quite hard to do this when dealing with curves. But I'm just going to show you what else you can do. So you can see just using an array and an object offset, we're already able to create really complex looking things, which is really cool. So let's close that out. So now how does this come to conjunction with this? Well, if we go here and type curve and we'll look for the curve object, and let's just increase this. Let's just do relative offset for now. You see it's all in an array. And if I click on my curve and move it around, it's kind of like undulating a little bit. Nothing too spectacular right now. Let's move this back into the center. So let's just origin, and let's move this to the world origin. Selection to cursor. Okay. As you find it, I just like resetting it. It's just a habit I've built over time. And now let's just kind of scale our path to fit all the cubes here. So I've tabbed into the path modifier, and I'm curve, and I'm just kind of more or less elongating it this way. Okay, hit tab, and now it's connected. So look what happens when I start moving this curve. We get really interesting. It's following the spline of this, essentially, and we can start having fun. You can also see it's kind of shearing it a little bit. So if you have like objects that need to be slightly deformed to follow this nice curve, you can see excuse me, it's slowly bending it around to try and create that nice silhouette. And you can see if we go back and forth, it still adds to it. We can also automate this process by having, you can see fixed count here to fit the curve of here. So what does this do? Well, if we hit E to extrude the curve and move it, you can see it's automatically populating this, which can be really handy for creating more automated solutions. And now you can see I'm just having fun, just moving it around like this. And there we go. We already have something kind of complex looking. As for concept art, let's say if, let me just delete all the curves here. Everything's stacked on top of it's actually it can't find this nerve path, so I'm just going to delete this. Remember we added all those extra objects. Well, in curve, we'll add a circle, drag it out a bit, scale it, and let's just select to fit this curve, and to curve object around here. So now we have this kind of cool looking thing. You notice down here, deform axis. If we play around with this, we can start seeing the differences. Like this is going up on Y, Z axis. It's adding these interesting shapes here. And I believe X is the correct one. The reason Y looks so squished is because the cube itself is right in the center. So to make this go around, we need to move it to the edge here. So we're just going to drag this, and now you can see what's happening. It's dragging it out, and it's kind of deforming it. Like that. Whoop. There we go. And there we go. Let's just do 1, 0.5, oh, 2. And sometimes it's a bit hard to try and find the correct values. So we can scale them if we need to. Oh, 1.5. And just kind of like guess more or less where it needs to be. So if we scale this up, and now look, we're kind of creating a little cool tower this way. Can scale this down, scale this up. I kind of like the size of this around here. And then we can just increase a factor like this. Maybe bring this a bit forward. And now we can kind of see like this isn't really working to our advantage, this fit curve. So we'll either go back to fixed count or fit length. And this will tell us like how long it should be. This is actually not working. So we'll go back to fixed count. And I kind of like eyeballing it like that. Okay, so we have this. We can like scale this around. You can see it. We have some manipulation techniques. We can move this around to create more interesting shapes. But the fun comes in when we can start manipulating the base shape that we're moving around. So currently it's just it's just this. This is what we have. What happens if, you know, we go in, add an extra edge loop, and just select this and scale it like that. And if we go here and just, you know, I'm just guessing right now, just add some interesting variation of shapes, you know, do your different hierarchy of reads, meaning that like you want your like large, medium, and small frequency of detail, just to break it up nicely. So let's add some smaller detail here, like that, and even smaller here. Whoop. And you can add anything on your shape. I'm just having fun here. All right, we could probably bring this down a bit more, and like that. So now we have like large, smaller detail. It's kind of even. So let's just bring this down a bit more. Have another read here like that. All right. So now look at that. now we have this really rather complex looking shape. You can see it's kind of like cutting in between the two here. So we just need to either scale this up a bit more, like that. I think scaling it down does anything. You can bring it in to create like shapes like that, bring it out. Lots of things you can do. So where else can we go from here? So let's say we can actually go in and start manipulating this. As you can see, it's starting to move the shapes around because it's arraying to, or it's curving around to this curve. This might be a little difficult to manipulate around. So if we just go in and delete that and add in a square instead, here, whoop, make it a bit bigger, bring this out a bit more, and probably we don't need 14, but you can kind of see we're kind of finding some rather interesting shapes to play around with. This example is not that great, but because I was building it for a circle, but you can see that's what we can end up doing. So what else can we do with this curve and array modifier? Well, let's go back to that object and like manipulating it around that. So let's say we want the monkey and we want everything to offset based on this monkey. Now scale offset to this monkey based on her scale, height, and rotation. Even though if we do like scale, it like resets everything large and gets bigger and bigger. Because it's reading, what it's basically doing is reading off the values over here. I believe the dimension as well. So if we had dimensions all at 1, and then we reset the scale, you can see it's acting funky. Let's do 0, it's slowly getting bigger. Delete that. Probably best to use empties, unless there's a specific use case for this. Oh, it's probably because I didn't scale this correctly. That's the most important thing. Excuse me. Let's try this again. There we go. So if you start manipulating these objects over here, you can see it's affecting it. So always make sure to reset the scale. Now this makes more sense. So there might be something specific you want to do with Suzanne here. Make it a bit larger. Maybe it turns around. And let's put a plane here, and you can start building a rather complex scene this way. I'm just gonna replace Suzanne with an empty, just to show you the same idea, same concept. Just that empties do not render. So let's say you have something like this. You want the shapes to slightly get bigger, and let's just do this, and add a light, spotlight. Let's add a sun. And you can see you're already building something with the most basic things we have here. And we can start like rotating it slightly just to give some interesting looks like that. And then we can have a light do this, bring it down like that. And we already have a cool looking scene. Alright, I think this is enough tools for you to play around with. Curve and array. Thank you.